Hello and welcome to the Break the Silence podcast by Aid to the Church in Need, where we discuss issues related to Christian persecution and religious freedom. Aid to the Church in Need, or ACN, is an international Catholic charity supporting persecuted and other suffering Christians around the world. I'm John Newton, the Communications and Research Manager here at Aid to the Church in Need, and I'm delighted to be joined by Father Francis, who was ordained a priest in Archdiocese, Nigeria in 2010. He's currently completing his doctoral studies at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in Rome and is visiting the UK for a short time. And we're very happy that you've given us the time to come in and see us today, Father.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me in your studio.
So, Father Francis, you've been a seminarian in Nigeria, you've trained for the priesthood in Nigeria, and now you're helping to train future priests in Nigeria. What's the reality of life like being a seminarian in Nigeria?
First of all, it's important to know that Nigeria has a high number of vocation, many seminarians, and it's a profound experience being a seminarian. It's something that is woven with high academic study, pastoral activities, and then exercise in ministry. It's always a journey for about 10 years. First, it's 4 years of philosophy. You begin first with a year of spiritual formation in the spiritual year, and then you proceed on to do 4 years of philosophical studies, very quite rigorous. I'm sure none of the seminaries study less than 100 courses for the first degree.
Goodness.
And then you have a year of pastoral year where you go to exercise work in the parish for a year, pastoral year, and then you proceed on to return back to the seminary for 4 years of theology before you're ordained. So it's a long process of rigorous academic spiritual formation, and it's often in the seminary, the four years of philosophy and 4 years of theology, they're often in the seminary where it is woven through a communal living, through discernment, the formators journey with them, and then to properly discern the genuineness of the vocation. So it's a rigorous formation pattern in Nigeria.
And as well as having a good number of seminarians, Nigeria also has some of the highest rates of mass attendance in the world. What do you think is the reason for this? And what can we Christians in the West learn from what you're doing in Nigeria?
Well, there are quite a number of reasons that could account for the high mass attendance in Nigeria. First and foremost, Nigeria is a very religious nation, perhaps one of the most religious nations in the world. It has a strong religious culture. Christianity, it's woven with the culture of the people, and so people naturally find it it's a cultural activity, first and foremost. And two, the church is a place of community where people come to bond and forge relationships. And then it's a place of belongingness. And so people always come to the church. And also there's a dimension that has to do with charity. The churches in Nigeria have a lot to do with charity. I mean, people who naturally, a first impulsive reaction of someone who has a challenge, what can the church do for me? What can God do for me? And so the church is also a bedrock for exercising charity. There is also charismatic movements. The high involvement of the worship in Nigeria, it's very active and robust. And so people who come to church, they find it as a place of spiritual connection, and the worship style is very impressive. I think that the church in the West has a lot to learn when it comes to the way worship is done. Of course, the mass is one everywhere, but I think the West, they need to add a lot of life to it. There's a lot of singing in the worship, in our Catholic worship. There's a lot of dancing. People connect with it a lot. Of course, the liturgy goes beyond what God does for us. People also come to exercise spiritual worship. And so being active participation has heightened religious involvement in Nigeria. And I think the West can have a lot to learn with that.
Okay. What's the day-to-day experience of being a Christian in Nigeria? I mean, I know it can vary dramatically from region to region, but what's it like, and what are some of those regional differences?
Well, day-to-day experience of being a Christian in Nigeria. Being a Christian is gradually becoming challenging with several religious, political tensions, including efforts at kidnapping. Nigeria is a society where religion intertwines very closely with politics. Sadly enough is that part of the problem of religion in Nigeria is what can be called the religionization of politics and the politicization of religion. Both aspects are interwoven. The political aspect, religion is woven, and also culture is also woven around it. So being a Christian, first and foremost, one exercise is freedom of worship. But I think that this freedom of worship is gradually coming under threat by different policies, not just from government, but also domestic issues and persecution, which are either covert and some are quite overt. And so these are different forms of what it means to be a Christian today in Nigeria. It's gradually becoming challenging, especially in northern part of Nigeria, where there are places where I understand that priests don't easily get on their Roman collar because of being identified. This is not a very common experience, especially for the South. So being a Christian in Nigeria in the North is different from the South. Nigeria is divided between the North, South, and the East. The northern part, I mean the tripod, North, South, and then the East. The South and the East are more Christian, and the North is more Muslim. And so the practice of Christianity in the North can be slow and not very active and robust, but in the South and the East is very dominant.
Now, you were speaking about the kidnappings there, and there have been various violent activities. You touched on the North and some of the problems with extremist groups like Boko Haram, which I'm sure you were referring to. Have there been reports of priests being kidnapped in your home state? Or do you know of anybody who's personally been kidnapped or affected by these extremists?
Oh, quite a number of them. And I feel quite sad when I was coming to Rome on the 26th of June 2022. I was still on transit when I got the news of one of my diocesan priests being kidnapped in the morning. He was about to go for Mass. Father Christopher Odia of my own diocese. He was on his way to go for Mass, and when he opened the door, we had kidnappers lying in wait for him at the early house as early as 6:30 a.m. And then he was dragged into the bush. And much later, before evening, we got the news that he was murdered in cold blood. That is a very pathetic story, and the bishop had to erect a cross at that place where he was murdered in cold blood. And quite a number of them in my place of assignment, the seminary where I serve as a formator and a lecturer, the Seminary of All Saints. One of my colleagues, Father Idaosa Madasun, was also kidnapped in one of his ways. So sometimes people really are careful of clerical identity because priests are becoming targets of kidnapping, perhaps because of the conception or the misrepresentation that the church or the clergy, they are part of the elite, or they have money, or they are vulnerable. So the community, even if the church doesn't pay ransom, there are people out of sympathy, friends who may want to say, we can't stand seeing our priests in the hands of the kidnappers. And then they want to set release, and then people, they mull money together to try to set him free. And it only makes the process unabated.
Now, you know, the idea that priests are kidnapped in the North and the Middle Belt is something I think we're quite used to, you know, because it's either extremists or bandits or criminal groups. But who's doing the kidnapping in the South? Is it zealots? Is it just for criminal activities to get the ransom? I mean, what's the motivation in the South?
Well, I think that kidnapping, it's underreported in Nigeria. I feel it's underreported because it's not an incident just predominated in the North, but it's even today, even in the South, we are suffering what could be called sympathy apathy. People have become apathetic to situations. It no longer makes headline. We only hear of the peak kidnappings. But in the South, I think these extremists have infiltrated everywhere.
Right.
It's not only, we don't have extremists in only in northern Nigeria today. We have them in, as long as there are bushes, as long as they have different routes today. And I think they have thriving, or they are thriving largely because of low government policy that tracks them down. I feel the government can do better with their policies, and the security agencies can be more proactive. Well, on the papers, and there are a lot of laws you can see talking about all of these things, but in my opinion, I think that some of these laws, they are very nominal. They are not very effective. Because if they were effective, we would have been getting to the end of kidnapping. But I think it has had a long run that it is becoming a way of life in Nigeria.
What do you think the reasons are we're seeing more kidnapping, more violence, more, acts of random extremism in Nigeria? I mean, over the last 10 years, there seems to have been an explosion, first with Boko Haram, then the problems in the Middle Belt. Why do you think we have seen this growth of new problems?
Well, the reason why kidnapping is thriving, in my opinion, is because of the pauperization of the economy. There is, the economy has been largely pauperized. When people live in need, the natural tendency is want to do things by force.
Yes.
It is a case of almost lupus homini, man eat man. We are in an Obesian society. So people want to, once we have an enabling society where people can have their enabling laws, we have the security agencies at work, and the poverty level is reduced, I do not think there will be need for anyone to go and kidnap for money. The reason is because these people, they need money. And so we are having a case of the tyranny of terrorists.
Yes.
So the tyranny of terrorists, people are taking at the terrorists, and I also think that this monster is hydra-headed. It did not just come one bit. When people, some of them have been bred, some of them have been given backing, perhaps by political leaders, either to achieve to achieve political positions or thereabout. And so they morph into a sect that cannot be controlled. And so this is it's a complex situation, in my opinion, that has morphed into this very difficult security situation. So I really feel if kidnapping would stop in Nigeria, the first thing is to drop poverty, is to drop unemployment. When we drop unemployment, we drop poverty, and naturally things will take their course. For instance, in the Western world, if you have no, you just rent a house and you have no properties, and you walk into a place and you can get free furniture and everything, why should someone steal? Why should I break into your house? If there are jobs and it is paying, why should I break into your house? Why should I kidnap someone? Also, the issue of uneven allocation of the public wealth, that is part of it. Some of them, they are brewed by regional and ethnic tensions. So ethnicism is also a very fundamental problem in the dynamic structure of Nigeria. So that dynamic cannot really weave out culture, the ethnicism, people are different, the tension between religions, tension between ethnic cultures, and so it's a hydra-headed problem.
Yeah. You were speaking about tensions between different religious groups. Given all the problems that there are in the country, what do you think the future holds? Particularly, what do you think it holds in terms for a society that does have different religions and which do seem to be sort of pushed apart by extremism? Do you see that the country coming back as a harmonious whole in the future? I mean, what would your prognosis be?
Well, if you want me to speak, if this about the future of religious freedom, I would think that, well, immediately there are the law, the Constitution guarantees religious freedom, but various factors pose challenge at the moment. Of course, I'm a priest and I'm a merchant of hope, and so I believe that things will get better for Nigeria. Nonetheless, there are a couple of issues we are still, as a nation, withering these teething problems. Every nation has its own peculiar problems. We are having these problems in Nigeria, but I believe that one of the things that cannot be completely dwarfed is the religiosity of Nigeria, be it Christian or Muslim. It may go through a rough stage of maturity. I believe that at some point in time, with good leaders, we are evolving. We are going through the dynamics, thesis and antithesis, and then the synthesis. We are going through the dynamics. I believe these are all process of maturation in our political and religious economy. I believe that at some point in time, all of these things will form well, and then we have a better nation, a religious nation that is sanitized. It only will take more time. So I believe with time, there will be, as long as we begin to de-ethnicize religion, de-politicize religion, de-emphasize a religion of many, and these are some of the things that will begin purify the kind of religion that we practice. I think that with time, religion can become a formidable force, and there will be religious freedom. But when this will be, that exactly I don't know. But I am a priest and I'm a merchant of hope. I believe there is hope for Nigeria, but it's going to take a slow but a steady process.
And just finishing on a personal question, Aid to the Church in Need has been delighted to be helping you personally. Can you tell us a bit about the help you're receiving from the charity?
Oh, beautiful. When I first got the notice to be at the office of the Aid to the Church in Need, I said, wow, this is very providential, because I'm a beneficiary to the Aid to the Church in Need for sponsoring my licentiate studies at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. And well enough, they were quite steady and formidable. Without them, I am not sure it would have been a rough journey. With that support, it was good. And then afterward, I also got, having completed my licentiate studies, I turned in my documentation. Providentially, I was also selected again for being granted scholarship for my doctorate to study church history at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. So I am a beneficiary to the charity and the benevolence of the Aid to the Church in Need. And so I can say it's a worthy ambassador being in your office.
And of course, you're going to go back into the church in Nigeria because you're working in seminaries. Can you just say a bit about how your studies are going to help, when you go back to Nigeria?
Yes. I am currently studying church history, and my studies, I have been researching on the interventions of the Cali Bishops' Conference in Nigeria during the military regime from 1966 to 1975. It's a very profound work that deals with ecclesiastical hierarchy. Going back to the church in Nigeria, from the 1960s, we had a gradual movement of indigenization of the church in Nigeria from the Western missionaries. And so I have been looking at the concept of indigenization of the gospel. And so domestication of the gospel, how people enculturation of the gospel, evangelization. These tripods of evangelization, of enculturation and indigenization. They are efforts of my research, which I have been doing. So going back to Nigeria, first of all, I will be back in the seminary as a professor of church history, and having a background in philosophy where also I have majored in epistemology. It gives me a very strong foundation to promote the different dimensions of church history. Church history is a very versatile field where we have different areas, including geography, the writing of saints, we have archiving, we have paleontology, we have quite a couple of them in church history. So the fathers, and my focus being chronicling and journeying with the Christian development in Nigeria, or Catholicism, the involvement of the hierarchies. I think it will contribute a lot, and then we can build a formidable front of church history among the church historians. I think it's also in an area where we have scarce scholars, very few scholars in Nigeria. And so coming back, we have a number of people who have studied canon law, scripture, but not so many who have done church history. We have people who have done patrology and patristics, but you know, patrology and patristic is circumscribed to the first 8th century. But church history goes beyond to the 20th century. And so it will be a good time to revive church history. More importantly for Nigeria, where the study of history in the secular society has been shortchanged and has been discounted, coming to study church history would be like restoring one of a major fabric in the society and in seminary formation. And so coming back into the seminary as a professor of church history, I think it will be a very welcome blessing to our regional seminary.
Fantastic. So the future will be built, as it so often is, upon the foundations of the past.
Oh, very correct.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Father Francis. And thank you to everyone that's joined us listening to this podcast. Please subscribe to the Aid to the Church in Need UK YouTube channel and follow us on social media. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much, and God bless.